All right, well, may as well get started.
Yeah.
I'm Rob Webb.
Hi, Rob.
Hi, Rob.
Lots of you have seen me. Do we have any new people here tonight? I mean, it hasn't
Kind of new.
kind of new. All right. Well, welcome. Astronomy enthusiasts of Lancaster County. A group that gets together once a month to talk about the night sky, stuff that we've done, and get some good guest speakers coming in. Lane apologizes for leaving you in the hands of the vice president and the treasurer and the secretary, but he does not apologize for being in Florida right now. He's having fun at the, what star party is it called?
Winter Star Party.
Winter Star Party,
In the
down in
Keys.
the Florida Keys, so, yeah. He's enjoying himself right now. He is not in the sub-freezing weather, but, yeah, so just wanted to do a couple of announcements. Number one, before I forget, the Linnets Library, first of all, did you notice the new floors?
Yes.
Looking sharp, they painted the walls too, so I heard they did it all for us, but they have a survey that they're conducting. It's just a quick little 4-question survey so that they can better their programs here. The slips are on the back table back there. So later tonight, before you leave, if we're not, rushing out the door, which I think we'll be all right with that tonight, go ahead and fill one out and just leave it on the desk and on the table, and they'll use it. So go ahead and do that. Couple quick things as far as the calendar is concerned. Saturday, March 2nd is an open house at the Muddy Run Observatory. That's where you can go down to Muddy Run. We've talked about this a bit before. Some of the best guys in Lancaster County. There's telescopes there that they will have operational and you can use. So good stuff going on there. Next meeting is Wednesday, March 6th, to be decided. March 9th, there's a Star Watch and Planetarium open house. I believe that's Manhattan Township. Is that Dave's?
That's Dave.
That's Dave. So if you want to help out Dave at Manhattan Township, March 9th is his star party. And if you want to help out me, mine's a better star party, I think. But March 27th, it's a Wednesday. His is a Saturday. Mine's a Wednesday night. Pepper Valley Fall Star Party. We just need some telescopes there, people to just man a telescope and take a look, and you can come in and check out the planetarium. So if you want to put those on your calendar, I'll be putting an email out later. But the more telescopes, the better. And at least for me, and I assume for Dave, it's rain or shine. If it's raining and you were planning on just using the telescope, well, you can come, but we will not be using the telescope, but we will have the star party.
And what's that called?
Peckway Valley Fall Star Party,
And when is it?
March 27th.
Doesn't sound like fall to me.
Oh.
That's good observation,
Cut and paste, right?
Exactly. That's exactly what that is. I will change that to the Spring Star Party as we speak here. I'll tell you, by this time of night, things are not, my accuracy goes down a bit. Okay, that'll be changed when I refresh the page later. Thank you. April 3rd is another meeting, another Muddy Run open house on April 6th. Of course, all this information is out there for you. Looks like Manhattan Township Astronomy Club is doing a Star Watch and open house on Saturday, April 13th as well. Again, you could probably use more scopes and such there. April 26th, stars over the Susquehanna. I know it's still somewhat tentative. We haven't totally finalized, but
I think they figured for the 26th, just the timing of the start.
mm-hmm. Yeah, over at Columbia Crossing, it's like a shopping center, isn't it?
No, it's right where the railroad trail is.
River Park,
River
it's the
Park,
River
yeah.
Park,
Yeah.
Okay.
foot of the bridge
They're looking at 7:30 to 10 p.m. I think Lane was going to do some sort of presentation, and then we could be there to show people the stars. It's really just a time for people to come out and
Scopes, yeah.
look through the scopes. So part of our public outreach to area places. Looks like May 3rd is another Manhattan Township. Man, he's doing a lot of Star Watch. But this one, I'll put my own personal plug in for this. Saturday, May the 4th, okay? Star Wars Day for some of you. Saturday, May the 4th is the planetarium showcase for Redwood Valley. I have a class of kids taking a course in how to make a planetarium show. And we'll have 6 shows running. We'll have some activities for kids, and we're hoping at night to have some telescopes, kind of like the reopening of our planetarium last year. But it is Saturday, May the 4th. If you want to start putting that on your calendar, that would be cool too. But I think we're good with calendar. Any questions about any of that awesome astronomy stuff that's happening?
Did you say this is also available on the internet?
Yeah, if you go to aelc.us, right there, if you go to that website, there'll be a bunch of lines at the top, right here, and just click on the one that says calendar.
Thank you.
Yep, and that's all there. Cool. Tom, you had
Yeah, a
something
couple
else?
things. When Rob mentioned the Muddy Run, there's an article in the March S&T, okay, that talks about the whole, how that started, how our group and 2 other clubs support that with scopes. It's the Hartford Astronomical League, Rittenhouse, and ALC to do that. So, every month they have the public star watcher bring our scopes down there, and it's open to the public. They also open the observatory. So, have a lot of activity going on there each month. But it's on our calendar. That'll come up as soon as you get to the homepage. The calendar will already come up. Okay.
Is that normally the first Saturday of the month?
Well,
Probably
yeah, I think.
Oh, yeah, that's
Yeah.
right, yes, we do.
Yeah. But for club members, they'll have some time that we can go out ourselves and just with our own, without having, you can't really talk and show your scopes off, things like that, if you're trying to get some information or trying to get some help with members. When you have 200 people lined up and look at scopes, so it's not much. You're pretty busy when you're doing outreach. So they have times when they invite us to come out, the supporting clubs to come out and just observe ourselves. So they'll be posting that, and we'll send an email out about that. When you're a club member, as you know, you're also a member of the Astronomical League. And of course, you should be all getting this Reflector magazine. Now, if you haven't gotten it, if you're just a new member, it takes about 4 months to get on it, because I have to send a new roster in. But they have observing programs, that quite a number of them, and they give award certificates and pins. And 2 of our club members just recently got awards. Gary Dietz in the back there, if you raise your hand, Gary. Okay, he did, and this is the December issue, he's in the December issue. He did the Binocular Messier Observing Program, where you had to look at 50 or more observations, and you put up your data and your log. He also did, recently finished up, and this will be announced this comes out quarterly, so the March edition. Gary did the Messier Observing Program for telescopes. He did 71 observations and logged those. Okay, and he gets a certificate. If you get all 110, you get in. And I think you're going to go for that right there.
That's my next one, yeah.
Then
I didn't get the pin yet.
Dan Fry is in here, but he completed, which was in the December issue. He completed the Lunar Observing Program, which looked at 100 lunar objects, either with binoculars. Well, there's some for binoculars and others for telescopes. You have to, detail those out. And if you go into these and you go into the magazine and back it, or on their website, it gives all the observing programs. And really, if you really want to get observing, and you can use there's even naked eye, or binocular or telescope, okay? And you can do different programs. It teaches you and forces you to really learn the night sky and look at objects, and you keep your logs, but an officer of the club would then submit that for you to the Astronomical League and determine if you have done all the requirements, and then you get your certificate, your pin. So just want to recognize Gary and Dan Fry, who just completed that.
Let's give them a round of applause. That is very jealous. Did anybody get to go out and check out the sky this month? See anything cool?
Cloud.
What'd you say?
Well, the eclipse.
Nice. Oh, yeah, I forgot that happened. Yeah,
I saw Uranus.
all right, through a telescope.
No, with just my eyes.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, how many of you saw the eclipse? All right. Beautiful. Weather turned out to be cold, but it was there.
It was good looking through a skylight, it was great.
Yeah.
I cheated.
Yeah. Thinking of that, I won't watch him. We won't watch him now. But if you do go to my YouTube channel, and I have cards up here, but I did have some time-lapse photos of the eclipse, which might interest you, which is pretty cool. Did anybody get any good pictures of it? Yeah. Are they on a website that we can show them real quick? I'll take that as a no.
No, they're on my phone.
Okay. Nice. Did you hear that there was an impact during the eclipse?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, there was right on the darkest, pretty much the darkest corner of the moon. Right there, right in fact, I think like the first 2 minutes or so of the eclipse, something struck, and the Griffith Observatory was doing a live webcast of it through their telescope, and they actually caught it on their camera. And so then they looked around and said, "Oh, is this just a hot pixel? What is this?" And other people actually found it. Just a bright little dot, like about a pixel size, just flashed right in the bottom corner during the eclipse. But I've been doing a lot of looking at stuff in the mornings. This was actually beginning of January. You can see here, there's bright Venus up here and Jupiter right below down here. I have this beautiful spot right by a church that's on my way to work. And I'm usually going to work at, well, right before sunrise as a teacher, high school teacher, so that works out. And I've been taking them every couple of days, and so you start seeing Venus and Jupiter get closer together. This is January 11th. Then January 15th, they're a little bit closer together. Can we get the lights a little bit lower?
I don't know how to do it, but.
Back there, at the table.
Oh, here's my favorite eclipse picture. Yeah, it looks even better not on a projection screen. But then you look on, let's see, where was this? This was January 22nd. They were right in line. They were about 2 degrees apart. So about 2 pinky widths apart back then. Then a couple days later, Jupiter started passing. Let's see, yeah, you can actually see Scorpius a little bit in there as well, if you get the right exposure. And it's just playing around with some shots another morning. Let's see, this should answer our question about when the moon was in between. There's Venus, there's Jupiter, there's the moon on, it says 7 days ago, so I assume it was a Wednesday. So I bet you Thursday morning. Thursday morning is when the moon was right there, and that's the morning I did not wake up. So I did not get that shot. But it's just been nice to do that. Let's see. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, Wednesday. Beautiful shot right there. And then just yesterday, now Venus is here and Jupiter's up above. Saturn, if you would have been, I think it was right down here, and that's what we're getting to next. But it's just, it's beautiful. If you get up in the morning, get out there. Has anybody actually, have you been looking at that in the mornings? Well, here, I'm going to let me talk for a little bit without talking. This is the February Observing with Webb, and I'll even fast forward a little bit to the stuff that has already not passed, and then I'll look at the constellations at the end. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Observing with Webb, where a high school astronomy teacher tells you what you're looking at, why it's so cool, and what you should check out later this month at night. This is February of 2019. Don't forget to check out this as a podcast on podbean.com, mrwebb.podbean.com. And check out my YouTube channel, Mr. Webb PV, and also my Twitter feed, at Mr. Webb PV. Also get this on Stitcher and iTunes. Anyway, February 2019, we have a great morning lineup in the beginning of the month, a conjunction in the middle of the month. We have all the naked eye planets at some point visible in the month, the winter constellations, and a great lineup of planets ending the month as well. So it's making February a great month for naked eye astronomy. So with that, I hope you've been getting out in the mornings and seeing Venus and Jupiter out there. I've been catching a bunch of pictures, and you can get pictures just like this by going out in the morning at the beginning, or actually throughout the month, but especially in the beginning and the end of the month. Looking really good in the mornings. And yeah, I hope you saw the eclipse. It was absolutely gorgeous. Really quite remarkable. I have some other videos on YouTube. I have 2 time lapses, actually 3 time lapses, I think. All together, looking really good. It was a great time. But anyway, well, let's get back to February and let's talk about the planets. 10 degrees, very high, and then as the night goes on, it'll set around 11 p.m. So you can see that most of the night before most people go to bed. But let me back up a little bit, and let's go forward a little bit. Oh, look what pops up. Mercury. There we go. Basically, the last week or two in February, you can see Mercury. There you go. Now it's going to be low on the horizon. In fact, less than a fist width. That's 10 degrees above the horizon. And yeah, you might just catch it the last 2 weeks in the west. So as far as evening planets go, sunset planets, Mars and Mercury at the end of the month. Now, let's zoom back out and see if there are any other planets visible. Well, there's that green ecliptic. We don't see any. So let's move forward a couple hours and see when something pops up. Oh, there's Jupiter. Oh, Saturn and Venus. Ooh, lots of stuff going on in the morning. So let's go back. Let's go to February 2nd, okay? And let's take a look at this throughout the month. This is your last chance to catch the moon near these planets in the morning. See it right there below Saturn. You might be able to catch it February 2nd. You might Anybody need get some that? binoculars to Anybody do see that. that February 2nd?
However,
Let me get back to
Yeah, neither did I.
this. Really, for the first half or so of the month, you've got Saturn very low, but up there and able to be seen. You've got Venus up and to the right of that. Now, Venus is going to be the super duper bright one, the brightest one there. That is going to be easy to see. In fact, you can even see it through some thin clouds sometimes. And then up and to the right of that is Jupiter. Now, watch what happens throughout the month. Here, I'm going to go forward a couple days. And you notice that Saturn keeps getting higher and higher, and Venus is getting lower and lower, and Jupiter's kind of flying away there. All right, let me reset it. You notice Saturn and Venus are getting a little close, okay? And here's what I'll do. Let me bring, because the sun is rising earlier every day now, okay? Let's go February 15th, 16th, 17th, and 18th. Here you've got Venus and Saturn at a conjunction, all right? So what you see here is Venus and Saturn, they'll be close together. On the 18th, it will be less than 1 degree apart. So if you hold your pinky at arm's length away from you, the width of your pinky is about as far away as they're going to be. But anyway, Venus and Saturn up there on the morning of the 18th. You notice Jupiter sort of up here by itself. But then each morning you'll notice that, oh, now Venus is past Saturn, or Saturn is past Venus, depending on how you look at it. And things get a little tricky from there. And then at the end of the month, you know Venus is the lowest one with Saturn and then Jupiter. Then I'll talk about the moon coming up soon, but not right now. But anyway, so morning planets, you're looking at Venus, Saturn, and Jupiter. Just know that Venus is the brightest one, Jupiter is the highest one, and Saturn is the other one. So why is this so cool? Well, the nice thing is that you don't see 3 planets all together like this all too often. Plus, in the morning you get the sunrise, which gives a nice little color to all of this and a good perspective. It's just really, really beautiful. So again, Venus, Saturn, and Jupiter in the mornings, and Mars and Mercury in the evenings off in the west. So what's going on in February? Well, if you're talking about the moon, you're looking at dark skies for about the first 2 weeks. You've got the new moon on the 4th. That's when you have the darkest skies, and around that time, the crescent moons. The first quarter moon is on the 12th. That's visible until midnight. The right half of it is lit up. After that, you kind of get into the realm where the moon's too bright to do a lot of stargazing, but you've got the full moon on the 19th, and the last quarter moon is on the 26th, and the last quarter is visible from midnight and into the morning. But what about those dates? Well, on February 2nd, you might, as I mentioned before, be able to catch a very thin crescent moon down here with Saturn up and to the right, Venus up and to the right of that, and Jupiter up and to the right of that. But yeah, nothing much happens until February 10th. Now February 10th, you're going to have to go out after sunset, okay, and take a look at the western sky. And what you'll be able to see is the moon and Mars fairly close together. There they are. In fact, let's fast forward time a bit past sunset, and here you go. You'll see the moon and Mars somewhat close together. In fact, it'll be about 6 degrees apart, and yeah, just looking really pretty up there, okay? They will set at about 11 p.m. Okay? So there you go, Mars and the moon. And then nothing really happens until about a week later, and it's going to happen in the morning. And so we're going to have to look for Saturn and Venus, and I have already talked about this, but I want to take one more look at it. Saturn and Venus on February 18th will be less than 1 degree apart, and then they will move away from each other. But this is the conjunction. Just get out after 5 a.m., but before 6:30 a.m., and you're looking low in the southeast for Saturn and Venus, really close together. It'll be a great opportunity for some pictures. And yeah, don't forget to check this out. I didn't mention this before, but check it out the couple of days before and after, because they will still be close together, just not as close together. And lastly, for the month, the next exciting thing happens from February 26th to March 3rd. Let me show you what's going on, okay? Take a big look out here, and what you'll see is, wow, that's a pretty good lineup. You've got Venus, you've got Saturn, you've got Jupiter and the moon all lined up. How are you going to see this? Well, anytime after 5 a.m., you'll be able to see all 3 planets lined up. Now, every day, Venus is going to be the brightest and the lowest at the end of this month, right? Starting on 26th. And every day, Saturn will be in between Venus and Jupiter, but Jupiter will be far off to the right. In fact, I believe Saturn will be about a fist width, about 10 degrees away from Venus, and Jupiter about 2.5 fist widths, or 25 degrees, or if you do this little shaka, whatever that is, 25 degrees. That's what that is, from thumb to pinky, 25 degrees. Anyway, you will see that every day, but the moon will change positions here. So on the 26th, the moon is up and to the right of Jupiter. On the 27th, Jupiter and the moon actually get really close together, about 2 degrees apart, not so bad. In fact, I should probably zoom in and show you that that's really what photorealistically it'll look like. Okay? And then, there we go, what will happen is the moon will travel through and in between Jupiter and Saturn. Okay? Then, it'll be really close to Saturn. It'll be a lot more of a crescent moon. Saturn will be to the left of it on March 1st. Then on March 2nd, a nice crescent moon right next to Venus with Saturn and Jupiter up and to the right. You might even get March 3rd, you might be able to see a very, very thin crescent moon down here with Venus right way up here up top. I think that's going to give you some good pictures because you might get some earth shine on the moon, and you'll see this nice thin crescent, and Venus will be super bright. It should be really, really good. But yeah, that's it for the events for February. Let's start talking about some of the constellations. I'm going to let you guys look at constellations. But I do have a recommendation if you go to skymaps.com, they do a great job of having constellations up there. Also, don't forget this, they do this every month. Look at it on YouTube if you forget. And you can also just email me. I did sign you up for the text email that I send out with links to all this as well. But you guys have any questions about anything coming up? All right, well, Tom, do you have anything else to say before I move on to the show? All right, well, with that, there we go. Okay, this is not part of the show, but that is my son and I checking out a space shuttle down in DC.
Wow.
Let's see, where? It's huge.
They break for nothing.
Except for atmospheric drag, but you know, they try. That's what we're looking at. Start it over on that one. There you go, start it like that.
How far away?
Beautiful blue. All right, I'm gonna stop right there. I'm sorry about that, but I have to stop right there. We're gonna watch this at the end. Anybody know what that is right there? It's a
A
rocket.
nuclear missile?
Hopefully not.
Nuclear missile.
So that is this is one of the, I don't want to say greatest moments of my life, but it is in the top 10 of really cool things that astronomy has gotten me to do. That's why I named this ignition Rockets at Wallops. I was able to go down and see up close the launch of the Northrop Grumman 10 mission to the International Space Station. And I was able to go to Wallops Flight Facility to see this. Was something called NASA Social. Let me talk a little bit about this. So NASA, coming up on the 50th anniversary of the moon landings, there's a lot of private industries doing rocket launches and trying to get into space. And NASA could always use a bit more good press. And they started this thing called NASA Social. And so what they decided to do with NASA Social is, let's get a whole bunch of people that are on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, let's get them together and let's bring them down to a launch, show them what's going on, and then they spread that on social media and we get lots of free press. And so they put out a little press release back in October, and they said, hey, we're inviting active social media users to attend this 2-day event, and basically we got the same access as social media, or as regular news media would get. This is something to keep in mind. Participants should keep in mind that due to the complexity of these launches, it is possible the Antares rocket could launch at a later date beyond its scheduled launch window. Keep that in the back of your mind. But the whole point was, NASA Social said, look, you can get an up-close view of the launch, meet with rocket experts, go behind-the-scenes tour of Wallops Flight Facility, meet with fellow space enthusiasts, and also meet members of the NASA social media team. And I saw that and I said, ooh, this is really cool, right? So I said, all right, I'm going to apply. Let's do this. The problem was they don't fly you down there, right? Now this is Wallops, so I don't have to fly them. But, you're responsible for your transportation, you're responsible for getting off of work, thank goodness they did. And they don't give you any food or anything, but you get to see a rocket launch. So, I applied, and I said, this is a good one, because Wallops Flight Facility, I didn't know this like 10 years ago, but Wallops Flight Facility is a rocket launching site for NASA. They launch mostly smaller type rockets. They're, as far as it goes now, they're not going to launch anything that has a living being on it, okay, or a human or anything. But it's part of what's called the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport, They basically launch a lot of research rockets and some missions on Antares rockets because they're small enough to launch from there. Yeah. Now you obviously would know Kennedy Space Center, Cape Canaveral, that area. That's where the Apollo missions launched from, the Mercury missions, Gemini missions. That's where the Manned Space Flight Center really is. Excuse me. There are some other places around the country. Edwards Air Force Base in Vandenberg. Actually, there's a launch complex in Kodiak. Did you know that? That was something I just learned. Mostly research into the upper atmosphere and stuff. But yeah, they actually have ranges all over the place. Now, I thought, you know what? Since I'm a teacher, it's really hard for me to just take off work, right? I gotta get sub-plans ready. I gotta get the school district to okay it. So I said, okay, you know what? I'm gonna apply to one in Wallops Flight Facility. Okay? And that's what I did. So I applied and I said, look, I want to connect people from Lancaster County to this launch because I've been connected to previous launches before. Part of my application was I want to get people to see this even though they can't be there. I've seen Antares launches twice before from sitting on a hill in Lancaster County. This first one is a Laddie launch back in, I want to say 2012. This was an Antares rocket. If you get up on a hill in Lancaster County and they're launching an Antares rocket, you can see this burning ember, streaking across the sky. Now, you got to have no clouds, but you can see that. This was one that I had my brother-in-law stitched together in Photoshop for me. I can do a better job now, but that was like 10 years ago or something. Then a couple of years ago, I was able to see another one right here. So, in case you're wondering which line is the rocket, this one's the rocket, it's the arc, right? And right about there is when the first stage separated, burned out and separated. This line is a truck crossing the bridge on 222. That's 222 right there. This is a telephone wire. I don't get the perfect shot. But
Were you impressed visually? I know you were taking a photograph, but visually, were you impressed by what you were seeing?
I was impressed that I could see a rocket that was launching that was like 4 hours away. Like, I'm 200 miles or something.
I saw one several years ago. It was neat, and I'm sure it was probably one of those two.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, why can't I hear anything? Because it was so bright.
Yeah.
You think you could hear it, but
Yeah, it's like 200 miles away or something like that. And
Is that
you
what
would
it
think
is?
I think so. I'd have to really map it, but it's surprising. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw one from the Stalker's parking lot.
Ooh.
And there were like 20 cars there with people watching. And I was surprised how red the flame looked.
Mm-hmm.
Just because it was so far away.
Yeah. Well, it is. Yeah, I guess it would. I don't know. Maybe it was just red. I don't know. I mean, it does have a red.
Red, it wasn't.
Yeah. I don't know.
Question for the record, when that first stage dropped off at that kind of the top of the arc, what kind of altitude are we talking about right there?
I have the answer for you later. Well, yes, I do have the answer for you later. I don't have that in my mind. But many hundreds of feet. Yeah.
This was a time-lapse photograph?
Yeah, this was about a 2-minute exposure, I believe. Yeah, if I recall properly, which is always questionable. And this was a stitch of, I think, 20-second shots altogether. Yeah, it's neat. It's just this big red glowing, not even big, it's just red and glowing and just arcing across. It's just really neat. So anyway, that was the plan. I was trying to get people involved. I was going to do some live streaming, video, that sort of thing, and present to other astronomy enthusiasts. Right? That's what I'm doing now. So I get down there. We drive down there. My wife and my kid and I came along. They couldn't come with me though. I was the only one allowed to go with the NASA Social. So they actually stayed on Chincoteague Island while I was at Wallops. But we went down there and one hotel snafu. and a short nap before I had to wake up the next day, and I went to the Wallops Flight Visitor Center, and I checked in, and I got a swag bag. That was nice. I can't believe I forgot to wear them, but they gave me rocket socks.
Wow.
I was very impressed with that. A little Cygnus swan. Now, you're thinking, what's the deal with that? Cygnus is the name of the spacecraft that's on top of the rocket that eventually gets to the International Space Station. And so they give you Cygnus, the swan. The swan is the constellation myth that goes along with it. So they gave you little swans. I also got, I don't know why I'm proud of this, but I got my own little credential here with my name printed on it. It's laminated and all that. That makes me feel really good. Sticker. Anyway, so I got a little swag bag. It was neat. And then we get there, we check in. And of course, this is something where they had to check my credentials before. I had to give them 2 forms of ID because we're going on federal property, right? So they have security. And part of that security is all of the NASA social people have to get on a bus and all go over at once. But before we get on the bus, this guy has to sniff us out. He was adorable. He was excited. He was wagging his tail. But he sniffed out the bus to make sure no one was going to explode anything. And so we're good. It was a black lab, actually. He was just like 6 months into the job. So come on. The dog has a badge.
Yeah.
So anyway, we get on the bus and we go, and the first place we go is the Horizontal Integration Facility, or HIF, if you want an awkward acronym. Basically, the big old garage of NASA, at least in Wallops Island. This is where they put the rockets together, their own rocket lab. This is the first stage of an Antares rocket. This is the one that's, I think, actually going up in March. I'm not sure. But this is the next one in line. When we went to visit, the one that was going to launch was already on the launch pad. But this is the first stage. I mean, it's big. And this is the payload, or at least the fairings that surround the payload. So eventually what happens is that the rocket's going to launch. It uses up, this is filled with liquid oxygen, and probably some, I don't know too much about the chemistry of that, but at least liquid oxygen's in there. And it burns. There's 2 engines in the back there that burn it. Goes up, uses all the fuel. This part breaks off. There's a second stage. And in here is the payload and the Cygnus spacecraft. And then these 2 fairings separate apart when you get to a reasonable height where there's no air to slow you down anymore, and they fall away. I'm going to assume they burn up in the atmosphere, and then you're left with the payload going to the space station. But you can get a sense of how big it is just by looking at these people. Now this is a big rocket, right? I mean, it's not a Saturn V. It's not a Mercury Redstone, but it's still pretty darn big. Yeah.
It's bigger than a redstone.
You know, it could be. As I said that, I was like, maybe it is about the size of a redstone. I'll have to look up some stats for you on that. But yeah, it's big. Yes?
You say things fall away. Where do they fall?
I believe, good question. I believe that they burn up in the atmosphere. Because they've already gotten so high that by the time they would come back, they will hit the atmosphere and there'll be enough friction to burn it
So
up.
everybody's safe from that falling on them.
Mm-hmm. And they also launch it over the Atlantic Ocean. So even if it does fall, it's landing in the ocean.
Even a fuselage.
You know what? I'm gonna see if I can find out exactly what happens. And I thought they burned up, but I could be wrong.
I think they recovered that.
Maybe.
It's the first stage.
That's when they made that fuselage. Where the fuel's at.
Yeah, I'll see what happens to the first
Yeah,
stage.
they wasted them all.
Do you know what was going in the payload?
Oh yeah, we'll get to that. All right. So then, after the horizontal integration facility, we got to actually go to the launch pad, Pad 0A. They have obviously some whimsical signs right there, and I really appreciate it. But we go there, And this is before the launch, so about 12 hours before the launch was going to happen. I got to within a football field of this rocket. I never thought I would get that close to like an official NASA rocket. And you can see it there. There's the water tower, which acts as, when you start a rocket engine, there's an incredible amount of sound and energy in that. And you need a way to sort of absorb some of that sound and not light the pad on fire. And so they actually use water to suppress all of that sound and energy. You'll see a big plume come out of the bottom of the engine. I believe it's mostly water vapor. As you can see, this is the first stage of the Antares rocket. These are ginormous tanks that have, these are the liquid nitrogen tanks to help cool everything off. And this, it doesn't do it justice here, but that's an enormous tank of liquid oxygen, which is pretty much the fuel that they use. And here you can see the Cygnus, the fairings that surround the Cygnus.
Well, yeah, that looks like just by your neck in that left photograph, that it's almost as long as the rocket itself, that tank of liquid nitrogen, right? You can see it there, like coming out of your neck, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, they don't even fuel it until about 2 hours before launch, because having that much liquid oxygen is kind of a hazard, right?
Yeah.
But so anyway, those are some of the pictures I was able to take sitting there. This is our crew. There were about 50 NASA social members. It was interesting because I didn't know what to expect, but I was like, oh, there's going to be a bunch of teachers there, right? Well, not really. There were some, but we have, I don't know, this guy's a musician back here and used to be a science teacher. We have a radio personnel, radio DJ right there. She just sort of travels the globe and does really cool things. Photographers, musicians, really neat stuff, producers, people who work in the film industry. It's neat. And then I just took this neat picture because this is a fence that I assume is as old as the site. But it was just this weird juxtaposition of like the greatest engineering that's going on right now with a rusty old fence protecting it. Now, of course, it's NASA. They have outside security and all that. But it's just like, yeah, that's neat. Anyway, so we go to launch pad, and then we come back for the press conference. I got to sit in the press conference. And the room was actually not that much bigger than this room. Maybe chairs going as deep as the back wall back there. But yeah, I actually got to sit in a briefing. I think all of these guys are from NASA, except this guy. He's the president of Northrop Grumman. And you know, there's a whole bunch of journalists there asking questions like, oh, what's going on with the blah, 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 the cooling system, asking all these sophisticated questions. I said, you know what, I'm going to ask a question. And I asked my students, do you have any questions for these people? And one of my students said, are there any traditions? Like, tradition, like, is there some sort of lucky socks or, I don't know, just any sort of tradition before a launch, these superstitions, that sort of thing that go on. And I asked him, and the president of Northrop Grumman, he said, no. But he did, the funny thing is he didn't just say no, he did also make very certain that we knew that they didn't have like any special lucky underwear or anything, which makes me think he actually has special lucky underwear. I don't know. I can neither confirm nor deny anything. Also going on, so another cool part of Wallops is, now this is probably going to be pretty choppy, I apologize for it, but consistently we were seeing these airplanes doing touch and goes. And I never really knew this until I went down there. But these planes are coming in, they're kind of landing and then taking right off again. Does anybody know why an airplane would have to come in, touch the ground, and then lift off?
Practice.
Practice?
Practice.
Practice for what?
Landing.
Landing where? You got it. On aircraft carriers. Notice, this is a Navy plane, right? This plane is going to have to land on an aircraft carrier, right? Now here's the thing I learned from reading, the astronaut, last name was Scott.
Last name was Scott.
Dave Scott?
Dave Scott?
Yeah.
No, Scott Kelly, never mind, it was his first name. Scott Kelly. He was the guy who spent almost a year in space. He was a fighter pilot. And what you have to do in order to land on a carrier, let's say you're actually going to land on a carrier, you're in the ocean. Here's the thing, when you go into land, you can't slow down and just land. Because if you miss, you don't have enough airspeed to keep going. So whenever they land, they have to slow down a bit, but then once they touch and once they get really close to the carrier, they actually turn the gas on. Like they get ready to fly away, and then they latch on. There's a little cable on the carrier that actually gets them. But they're actually accelerating when the cable stops them. Because if the cable doesn't clip, if you're off center or whatever, you have to be able to get out of there and keep flying. So that's what they're actually training for right here. The flight facility has markings just like an aircraft carrier, and so they're coming in and they're touching and going and practicing those moves. Yeah?
Yeah, some of the early big fan jets, they would do that. You missed a wire, you'd go full throttle, and but the engine wouldn't spool up fast enough. So when you went off, it's called a bolter. You missed the wire, and we're not going fast enough just to climb away. So they would have to push the nose over and get airspeed as they went toward the ocean, and then pull up as they got enough airspeed.
Oh my goodness.
And they said at night, that was one of the scariest things in the world, to do that at night, where you go off the end of the carrier and have to push the nose over and count to 5 before you pull up.
Wow. Yeah, reading Scott Kelly's book, he was saying, you know, it's not just landing on a short area. It's landing on a short area that's moving side to side and tilting or up and down. And at night, the lights are, you know, they're just lights. You can't see the whole outline. But anyway, so that's one of the things that the flight facility here does. And we got to go and take a look at some of the planes that are in the hangar. Now, I didn't get too many pictures of all the planes. There were probably about 5 planes or so there. But they do research where they go. I think they had one going to South America to study ozone. They had another one going up north toward the North Pole, doing atmospheric studies, getting aerial data, that sort of thing. So they're using this area for aerial research as well. I also got to wear a flight suit, which was pretty nice. They had one there for you. I made sure that I kept it open so that you can see the AELC shirt that's in there. It had nothing to do with it not fitting. Then we got to move to another spot, which is where they build the rockets. Now these are the rockets that they do most. They fly, I think, about 1 a month, they said, or about anywhere from like 10 to 15 a year. And they build these small rockets. Now what do I mean by a small rocket? Well, here's a rocket. That's a person working at a computer. So they're not small rockets, but compared to what you know of from, you know, manned missions, yeah, they're small. But it was really neat to see, you know, how do they make them? How do they set them up? What's this facility like? The rockets that they send, this is a neat chart of the different types. And as you can see when you look at this, there's only like 1 or 2 one-stage rockets. Most of them are 2 and 3 stages. As you can see, like, I think this one is a Black Brant right here. That's their biggest one. You see that it has 1 stage down here that'll use up all of its fuel, separate. The second stage, which will use all of its fuel, separate, make it go higher and faster. And then this 3rd stage as well. And these will tell you how high they go, up and down, based on how much weight they have, right? So something like the Black Brant 12 could go up to 1,500 kilometers above sea level, or above where it launched. if it only has about 300 pounds of payload. But those are some of the types of rockets that they make them, right? They're machining them, which is, here's an actual black brand. That's a garage door. That's a normal, person door. There's the first stage, second stage, third stage. And you go in and you see they have all these little pieces that are just beautiful and shiny, and I wanted to take one home. They wouldn't let me, it wouldn't fit in my backpack. But they machine these out. In fact, you can see right here, there is what they call a blank for these pieces, where it's this aluminum, and basically they lathe the material away. Right? They don't really put it together or weld it. They like to have big chunks that they make into one whole piece, but then there are other parts that they bolt together later. One of the things I really enjoyed about this was the fact that to work at NASA, you don't have to have your PhD in astrophysics. These guys here, they're machinists that work for NASA. They're people who know how to run a lathe. They know how to operate a CNC machine, a computer numerical coded, I think is what it is, machine. They know how to put the code in and make it work. These are the builders. These are the people. If we don't have machinists at NASA, we don't have rockets, right? So I try to tell that to my students in my district. I'm like, look, you don't have to go to college and grad school and get your doctorate. Get good at being a machinist. Get good at making stuff, and you can do rocket science that way too. This is a big CNC machine right there. It's just impressive the kind of stuff that they have.
Rob,
Yeah.
you mentioned that they launched several rockets and several different types of rockets, but we only hear advertisements of like certain kinds of rockets or just ones that will be visible from here. I mean, we don't hear about tomorrow they're going to launch this and then a month later they're going to launch it. We might only hear about a few a year, right? Is that a certain kind of rocket that's going to reach a certain height that we will be able to see, or?
Yeah, so they are going, whenever they launch an Antares rocket, they're going to let people know. Like they really want to get that word out, because you can see it from here. Any of these rockets, you can't see from Lancaster County.
All right.
So, not all that impressive. I don't know, was it last summer or 2 summers ago? They were looking to launch a rocket from Wallops, and it just kept getting delayed. It was during the summer. I think it was the beginning of June or mid-June, and it just kept getting delayed and delayed for like a week and a half. But if you were down in the Outer Banks, or where I was, you could actually see it. No, wait, was that? I think that was Outer Banks. Yeah. So if it's big enough, they'll tell you about it. What you can do is actually follow NASA Wallops on Facebook or Twitter, because they'll let you know when they're launching, whether you can see it or not. They'll have a video feed usually, or they'll just record it and post it up later. Right now they're doing a lot in, I think it's Finland. They're doing a lot of launches up into the atmosphere, because right now what's going on up north? A lot. Anybody know? It's visual, it's really pretty.
Auroras.
Bingo. So they're launching this up into the ionosphere, and they're trying to see what's going on with these auroras. I think they've launched like 10 rockets or so just up there lately. So it's one of those things you kind of have to pay attention to it to know when they're going. And now, somewhat unceremonious was what you would call in Florida mission control. I kind of call it a range control. Oh, yeah.
Yes, the time before I went and saw the rocket at Stoppers, I went another time, and there was a gentleman there who had a website where you could look and watch it in real time on your phone. I wonder if those work all the time. That time it blew up or something like that.
I remember watching that one.
But anyway, so if you can't see it you can't go to a place where you can see it. If you know when it's going to be, you have to be able to see it.
Yeah, in fact, my wife and son, they were watching this as well, but they were a bit further away. They were watching on their phones that live feed to see when it was going to launch. A word of caution though, there's a good delay between that broadcast on your phone and when it actually happens. Because it was already, I think, a minute into launch before, it was already moving for a minute before the feed said ignition. So just be careful of those. I remember I tried, the one picture I took, I almost missed it because I was looking at my phone waiting for them to say ignition. And I think like, I actually saw it moving before they said ignition. So just be careful. But if you're just watching it from your couch, I mean, who cares? So this is mission control. This is range control. I guess just because it's a range as opposed to, it's not really the mission area. But I don't know. That doesn't look very impressive to me, does it? I mean, you got the little discoloration. It is winter. It's kind of like, it's kind of odd. But then you go inside and you see this massive control center where you've got 50 different stations with dual, triple monitors, really cool stuff. You've got, let's see, these are 4 high, probably about 10 across. These are like 40 television screens right there, giving different parts of the mission. So they weren't active when we went in there, but we did get to go. And of course, I sat down at a spot, filled my dream. You should have put on the comm, but And I don't know. I don't know if you'll think this is funny. I thought it was funny. We went by the coffee pot, and there's just this little sticky note that says 5-level scoops. As if these engineers, these NASA engineers, couldn't make coffee. You know? Or there's that one guy who doesn't know, but he decides to make it with like 8 beeping. I don't know. It's just funny.
Did it say 5.000?
See, I would have expected that, right? So then later that afternoon, I got to meet this guy, Robert Curbing. He's the second astronaut that I've met. He gave us a talk. He was talking about his missions on the space shuttle. And it was interesting because he started talking about actually how easy it was to come back from space. For me, I would think that would be the craziest, most anxiety-inducing, like, white-knuckle time in a mission. He's like, oh no, basically it's all on autopilot for the most part. You're just fixing any little thing that goes wrong, and you already have practiced this hundreds, thousands of times before. It's easy, it's second nature. That's why he's the astronaut, right?
Gravity works most of the time.
Yeah. So just really need to meet another astronaut. Now, okay, so that's all the behind-the-scenes things I got to see, which was cool. And then came the launch weather forecast. So it was supposed to launch on a Thursday morning. However, that Thursday morning was, and I doubt you can read this, but thick clouds, something weather, disturbed weather. I think it actually was disturbed weather, which is a weird way to say it, and low cloud ceilings. And then they had this little thing called the POV, probability of violation. So you have a certain set of conditions that need to be met in order to launch a rocket. And they said the probability of violating one of those is 95%. So they said, no, we're scrubbing the launch. We're not going to do it Thursday morning. Let's scrub it for Friday morning and see what happens. They said Friday morning doesn't even look all that much better because there's still ground winds and a low cloud ceiling. They can launch through a cloud ceiling. It's not recommended, and their probability of violation was, I think, 55% or something like that. So they ended up scrubbing it again for Saturday morning. Thank goodness I asked for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday off. I would have been very disappointed. And part of the reason they scrubbed it for Saturday morning was the POV was less than 5%. They're like, it's going to be perfect weather. It's going to be beautiful, cloudless, just great. Now, they'll never say 0%, because they're engineers. They'll never say 0%. But they said less than 5%. So that gave me, my wife Danielle, and my son Sikorsky some time to check out the area, which was nice. How many of you have ever been down to Chincoteague, Assateague, that area? What do you guys remember about it?
Horses.
Horses?
Red flowers.
Yeah.
Black flowers.
Yeah, we got to go into the wildlife refuge there, and we got to see some horses, some wild horses from afar. It was really neat. There's a little, I forget what kind of museum it is there. It's really neat. With little binoculars, you can check some stuff out. We got to check out the beach right there. He got to pretend he was wearing a flight suit with a cardboard cutout, and he built some stuff. Now, the Wallops Visitor Center is pretty cool for about an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. It's not an all-afternoon thing with the family, but it is pretty cool. They have some stuff to play with, neat things. It's more informational than it is interactive, but it is really cool. And from our beach little visit, I got to actually see the sunset on behind the launch pad here. There's the water tower right there. And you can see it set. And so let's come back to these sides of the rocket launch, right? This will answer your question. So here's one of the graphics here. So ignition, that's times 0, right? You have the rocket, it ignites. It burns for about 3.7 seconds, and then it starts lifting off. They actually release it, right? Then 215 seconds, well, less than 4 minutes in, the main engine cuts off. So that means this whole first stage is completely spent. It's 58 miles into or above the Earth, and it cuts off. About 6 seconds later, stage 1 separates away, and then about 30 seconds later, the fairings come off as well. And right after the fairings separate, in fact, only 5 seconds, the interstage separates, and then the stage 2, the interstage is just that little collar that keeps it together. At stage 2, about 4.5 minutes in, stage 2 ignites. Okay, it's not. I forget if it's in. I don't think it's technically in orbit yet, but it's just about getting there. 267 seconds, and then that lasts until 430 seconds into the mission. Quick math, that's about what, 120, about 2-3 minutes into it more. Stage 2 burns, and then the payload separates, and then you have, if you can see, this is the Cygnus spacecraft right there. The Cygnus spacecraft in orbit, trying to catch up to the space station. Or space station catching up. I forget which way it comes. But anyway, lots of really cool stuff going on there. It takes about 3 days to get to the station, and it'll be up at the station for about 90 days. In fact, because of the delay, they launched, I think, 1 day before another launched. And back to your question, Elaine, you asked what was on it,
Yeah.
right? What was the point of this? Well, it wasn't people. This was a supply launch. So it had, I believe, let's see, they had about 7,400 pounds, so almost 4 tons of supplies for the space station. That would be food. That would be some experiments, lots of experiments. Actually, if you want to go and get a deep dive, look into the experiments that are on there. There was one that I was talking about, it was a simulation of a human cell, and they would use that to see how they could cure Parkinson's disease, which is just wild. I know there's lots of missing links between that I'm telling you, but really cool science that's going on. There's some student CubeSats are up there. Really, really neat stuff. But it's basically food, experiments, maybe some clothing for the astronauts, personal effects and such, some fresh fruit. Thanksgiving meals for them. It was right near Thanksgiving. Yeah. Tools.
Lucky underwear.
Yeah, fresh lucky underwear. You got it. You could probably send some of those Antares socks up there too. Did you have a question, George?
Well, actually, I do.
Yeah.
It's a little bit off your top. I take it that escape velocity all these years has not changed. whether you're talking Mercury, Gemini, or last week, what is it, 25,500 to get out of here? Oh, they're not leaving orbit.
5
No.
miles. Yeah, 5
These-
miles a second.
5 miles a second. Yeah, this isn't leaving orbit. So this is just getting
You're just
into.
finding the sweet spot where you're.
Yep. In fact, they had only a 4-minute launch window in the morning. Because the International Space Station passes by, right? They wanted to launch it at exactly the right time so that when they launch it up, it doesn't have too much to go to meet the space station.
Oh.
In fact, it still takes 3 days, but that 4-minute window keeps you within that 3 days. If you go any further than that, it'll take much longer to meet up. You'll need more fuel to catch up and meet up. But, yeah. All right, so, oh yes.
Real quick question.
Mhm.
When they launch these things, I guess there's no fly zone in that arena. So like a friend of mine has a pilot, we fly dogs around,
Mhm.
you know, their rescue dog. So if he's flying down that way, he would get an alert that they're gonna launch something out of that wall area. So you have to stay out of that area completely
Yes.
until they give you okay.
Mhm.
All right.
In fact, there have been a lot of launches that have been scrubbed, not for airplanes, because I think there's pretty good communication with FAA and flight towers and all that. And, you know, they tell I don't know how flying works, but I know that, you know, you have to ask for permission to take off and land, and you have to do your flight plan and all that. There's good communication there. The lack of communication is with boats. In fact, a summer or two ago, when we were trying to see that one that was launching in the summer, right? It was launching at night, like at 6 or actually 8 or 9 at night, so it was going to be perfect viewing. The first time, everything was beautiful, everything was great. There was a boat in the area. They had to cancel. They had to scrub the launch.
I heard about that, and I think they canceled it because of whatever gets jettisoned could have hit the boat, yeah.
Yeah, in fact, at the Range Control Center, there's actually a side room there that is constantly just looking at abort, right? If we abort now, what happens? Because they look at the center of mass of the rocket, like do they have to, if they self-destruct, where is that stuff going to land? And so they use those calculations and such to figure out, well, how big is our no boat zone? And, you know, when would we self-destruct? Would we self-destruct 10 seconds into the flight? Or would we be able to wait a little bit longer? You know, like, there's a lot of quick calculations happening there that has to do with that.
Plus terrorists.
Well, yeah.
So Rob, I don't understand why this 3-day thing, so it launches in a couple of minutes, it's up there.
Yeah.
And the space station, it goes around the Earth several times a day, right?
Once every 90 minutes.
Okay, so for those 3 days, is the launch, what they send into orbit, is it slowly
Yes.
following and catching up to the station? And
Yes,
getting
sir.
closer all the
Yeah,
time?
they
Is
join
that where
up
the
very
3
close
days?
and they're closing at a very slow rate.
I have a really cool video at the end, which should show you some of that.
Okay,
But, yeah, I do hear you. Why is it 3 days?
okay.
That seems a bit long to me, too.
Well, the reason they got such a small launch window is because of the plane alignment. In other words, the space station might not be right over when they launch, but the orbital plane is over them.
Okay.
So they got to launch, and depending where the space station is, they'll either go into a lower or a higher orbit. A lower orbit, they'll orbit faster and catch up to them, or a higher orbit, the space station will move faster and catch up to them. But it's more about hitting that plane alignment so they don't have to burn fuel,
Okay.
tracking sideways.
Thank you. I think this guy should be giving the presentation. So anyway, yeah, we're running low. So anyway, I had to set my alarms for midnight so that I could go to a parking lot, get on a bus, and get a police escort onto the launch range, which is really cool. So I get on there, everybody's there, and we get to the launch spot, and I took some pictures, but here's basically what it is. We're just on a field, And there's the rocket and the tower. The tower's actually the tall piece there. But we're basically in the field. Here's all of the NASA social people. They have a little floodlight just for the beginning to illuminate everything. You can see the stars, the constellation is beautiful out there. Just absolutely gorgeous. So I was out there. It was launching at like 4:50 or something. I don't know how I convinced her, but my wife got my boy up at 4:30 in the morning. Now they were still in Chincoteague, so they went out to a bridge right out there. They were about 10 miles away from the launch. I was 2 miles away from the launch. When you look at this picture, that rocket is 2 miles away. Question, how long would it take the sound to reach me? Approximately 10 seconds. You got it. 10 seconds. Because it moves about, what did I say, 5 miles a second, right? So, no, I messed that up. 5 seconds for a mile. 5 seconds for a mile. So, I had to delay it about 10 seconds. You'll see that later. I got some pretty neat full dome shots, so if you come to the planetarium show on May 4th and help out, you can come see this. But anyway, that was a zoomed in shot. Let's go. Let's see this thing. They even had a tent with like a heated tent with coffee and donuts and stuff. It was nice. I felt really important. This is my camera taking the shot. I just put it up there. There you go. There it goes. Beautiful blue. Oh, here comes a rumble. Sound system doesn't really do it justice, right? When you're there, has anybody been to a rocket launch? Okay. So you'll know what I mean when it feels like this wall, this percussion wall just coming at you. Some people said that they could see like their clothing move a little bit. I don't know about that, but it was just this wall of sound. I don't think I would want to be all that much closer. Maybe 1.5 miles or something, but it was loud, and you keep hearing it for a while. Let me rewind a little bit back here. Here it comes. I'll mute it. So right as it launches, some things to notice here. It's really, really bright. Of course, it's a night launch, so you can't really see that much. At this point, with my eyes, I could see a beautiful blue coming down out of the bottom of the rocket. Absolutely gorgeous. But, and what really made it awesome, like just absolutely spectacular, was look at the cloud down here, right? It was, oh, there it goes. Right? I know this is small, but I'll show you some more pictures because there are people who got better pictures than me. But it was just this orangish, reddish, white cloud that you were looking at.
That's not the steam coming off of
Yes.
water.
That's my understanding, yes. In fact, let me show you.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
This was like official
Right.
launch stuff. Like people have even more credentials than I do.
And we have a new
Am I reading it? No, that guy was
and
with
we
us.
have liftoff of the NG-10
But he's actually zooming in.
to the ISS. We've got engines in full power and nominal attitude.
Right? And so you lose track of the rocket. You can't see it because the engine itself, that light is so bright. But that cloud is just gorgeous. All right, same thing as before. Let's see, I think this one. No, I'm gonna skip this one. But I had a camera out there, and this is my picture. I was very happy with that. I had my T3i, which is actually the camera I have right there, which I have in my car at all times, just in case I see Venus or Jupiter and stuff in the morning. That's how I get those pictures. I already have I almost put it on the tripod in my trunk anyway.
What lens were you using with the T3i?
With this one, I had it on a 10mm.
Yeah.
I think it's a 10 to 18mm. Yeah. It's a really wide field. It's really nice. I like it. And I just had it, aimed really big like that. This was a 3-minute exposure. f7.1. I had to close it down a little bit. ISO 100. And I did a little adjustment afterward just to level it off and do a little bit of the colors. I'm not good at doing Photoshop and all that. It's not my thing. Now, this is where my pictures end, and I'm going to show you the really cool ones. I was talking with somebody who's a professional photographer. He's like, yeah, this is really washed out down here. And I was like, yeah, it kind of is. What do I do? Well, he said, don't start the picture right when it launches. Start the picture about 5 or 10 seconds in, because it's spending a lot of time being really bright at the bottom of your picture. Then you get something like this. I think he started when it was right about here, probably about 5 seconds in. That way it's not overexposed, it just goes up, 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 up. And hey, if you're looking for me, I'm right here. But this is my favorite shot that this guy, whoever at Altitude Gallery is, I forget his name, but he took it. And these are some pictures from a guy I met there, Scott Adams. So you see it just lifting off right there, and you see this cloud of water vapor coming off, and there's the blue coming out. It was absolutely so blue, just like that. That's not really adjusted all that much. This is my favorite picture of the whole thing, because you got the little red and the orange of the gases down there, but you also have the cloud. It's just, I don't know, just something about that. It really gets me. A friend of mine, Christopher Beck, he's in Virginia. He took a picture like I did before, except he's better at it and can actually stitch them together. He took this shot from down in Virginia. So you see it actually going up and then out.
Is that separation there, the first stage burn, second stage burn?
Right here, yes. Yeah, so it's, separation, and then the next stage burns.
I think the Fahrenheit on blue flame is like 4,000.
Is it?
I believe in that neighborhood. It's like blue flame is like really efficient and real hot, and it's burning practically everything.
Yeah. Those engines are quite impressive. And then, I don't know, just thought I'd end with I have some other stuff, but we came back and the sun was starting to rise, Venus is rising up. This was over the visitor center area. Then we had another conference, or another press conference. The president of Northrop Grumman, actually afterwards, everybody's closing up, getting ready to leave, packing up. They didn't even have stuff with them, they were just getting ready to leave. And there's like 20 of us there, and I just say, hey, hi, Rob Webb, Technical Valley. Talking to the president of Northrop Grumman. I'm like, don't we have the technology to launch through the clouds? Like, come on, aren't we at the point now where we don't need to see clearly? Can't we just launch right through the clouds? And he actually took the time. He took about 2 minutes with me and just said, well, yes, but, and I bet you Tom knows where I'm going with this. When you launch through clouds, whenever you launch a rocket, you're leaving a trail of ionized gas down to the ground. What likes to travel through ionized gas down to the ground? Lightning. In fact, Apollo 12 was struck by lightning twice when they launched up through the clouds. And that didn't completely fry their equipment, but it wasn't a fun time. So they've learned, just don't launch. And unless, I know they have launched a couple with some low cloud cover, but they typically don't do that. And just the last picture, I have a video after this to show, kind of bring it all together. But a couple days later, the ISS was passing over, and I said, you know what, I'm going to get a picture of it. So I put my camera out, and if you can see right here, that's the International Space Station traveling over top of us, essentially. Not an angle, but it's over top of us. It was neat because now I had that connection. Before it was just this hunk of metal up in the sky, but now it was like, oh, well, that's a thing with people on it that I watched food and supplies get launched in this marvel of engineering that got up there, and now they have supplies and they can keep on living. It was just really neat. Now another thing is, this is not the same launch, but the next day there was a launch from Russia that the space station actually recorded. They recorded the launch from there and it coming and meeting up with the space station. So pay attention right there. Right there is a rocket launching off of the Earth. Getting up into orbit. There's the stage burnout. It separates.
This is faster than real time.
Yes. Yeah, watch that. That's where it re-enters and burns up in the atmosphere. So I'm pretty sure that's what happened to the fairings in the first stage, but maybe I'm wrong. I'm not sure. Now it's burning again.
All lights are cities.
Yeah. Yeah, so you can see that launch, and I think the extra 3 days they didn't put in there. Yeah, so that
was
That's-
really good.
Well, thank you. Any questions or? Yeah.
If they, the launch you were talking about, they're taking items up to the space station, what if they take astronauts out? How long does it take for them to catch up to the space station? They spend an additional 3 days in orbit to catch up to it and exchange?
I don't know. I don't think it's 3 days. In fact, they did just launch some people. They usually launch from Russia, down in Kazakhstan, I think it is, the Cosmodrome. They launch them up, and I think they actually get up there, I want to say within a day. I'm not sure. 4 days?
Hours.
4 hours. They get there in 4 hours.
Wow.
Okay. I guess they have more fuel.
So you say these Antares, they have 4 or 5 a year, or?
The Antares, no. I don't know. I don't know how often they go. I'd say every
Is that
couple.
a social media group for every Antares?
They post on Facebook.
But they get
So
a
just
group
look
of
up NASA Wallops, and that should give you, that should get you.
But they get a group of media people like you to come every month?
Oh, they do that for launches in Florida as well. In fact, I got accepted to one in Florida, but it was like, oh, I need to buy my own airplane ticket, and it might not launch that day, and no, that wasn't happening. So,
How close to Virginia Beach is that?
I think you have to go up and around. So it's actually no. I'm not sure. But we do have to get out of here by 8. I didn't think I was going to talk that long.
Correct, just under 6 hours.
Just under 6 hours to get humans there, right?
From the Cosmos, they're the only ones that are allowed.
Did you shoot the wrong or?